Jimmy. Thanks, everybody. My name is Jerry Chan. As Jimmy said, I'm a Korea and Japan manager for Bitcoin Association, and today we have our exchange panel. This panel is we're very happy to have gathered a lot of folks here from the established financial industry, and we want to basically pick their brains to see what they think about this whole Bitcoin revolution and how it affects their business and how they plan to use it. So to kick everything off, I'm just going to run through the panel here and ask everybody to give a quick 30-second introduction about who they are, what they do, and what their business is about. All right, so let's start with Sean.
I'm Sean Dorsch, president of Clear Markets. We're a global operator of regulated exchanges for interest rate and currency derivatives in the US, Europe, and the United States.
Hi guys, I'm Tiong. I'm the founder and also the head of Global Alpha Trading, which is based in Hong Kong. Don't worry, I'm fully sanitized the last couple of weeks. And I also, basically, Global Alpha is a team that we employ diversified trading strategies, and also we are deeply involved in various blockchain, cryptocurrency initiatives out of Asia. I also am a director of VCT, which is the virtual currency trading exchange based in Tokyo.
Next, with Gabor.
Thank you. I'm Gabor. I'm the Business Development Director for Europe for OKCoin, which is a regulated crypto to fiat spot exchange, part of the OK Group and sister platform to OKX.
Wonderful.
As you know, I'm Roy Bernhard, the chief visionary behind the Bayesian Group, specifically Bayesian Fund. We're a crypto fintech initiative focusing on sort of the multidisciplinary world of fintech.
Wonderful. Great. So we're all here. You guys have all been seeing all that's been going on the last today and yesterday. It's been a while. Blockchain or Bitcoin has been around for more than 10 years now. And so, now that everybody in the room and probably most of everybody in the world at least knows what Bitcoin is and a little bit of what it can do, first thing I'd like to ask is your personal opinions on, from what are the remaining challenges that affect your industry, the businesses that you guys are engaged in, that still are the challenges that need to be probably overcome before you guys, engage, much more into using Bitcoin, the blockchain, and kind of pick your answers from reasons which maybe is it regulatory, is it technical know-how or lack thereof it, is it support companies, support services, legal reasons, business justification, take your pick. So let's start with Gabor.
I think one of the biggest challenges that we face as an exchange is competitiveness. It's a very competitive business with a handful of top exchanges driving the majority of trading volumes, and having the ability to constantly innovate, add new products, and also provide good customer service. And staying on top of that is our continuous biggest challenge.
Okay. Tiong, you want to go next?
I think the biggest challenge, that is kind of like, hindering a lot of large enterprises, especially financial institutions. And for the record, before joining the Bitcoin world, I was working in two investment banks, American-based investment banks. And then the biggest challenge, I think, for them to employ new technology, something like, it doesn't have to be blockchain, right? There are two challenges. One is about cost. Naturally, for a JP Morgan or for a Citibank to employ a whole new technology, it will cost a lot of money. Even for a 430 billion market cap bank like JP Morgan, it is quite a substantial amount of money. Not only that, I think the second thing that people usually do not think enough is about how you integrate the old technology that they're currently using and the new technology that they're going to employ. So the inertia has to be overcome before you see floods of interest coming into the market. I mean, we have a saying in the technology world and investment banks: if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah, I remember that. I used to be in technology in those same banks. Yeah, very true. How about Roy? Why don't you go next, since you guys are kind of new on the scene?
Sure. So I guess different comments, with regards to the blockchain industry itself, and with regards to exchanges. So I think both you have similar challenges. I think the biggest one is really just about noise and communication. I think that we're making a lot of noise and we're getting information out there, but we really need to find a way to break through to the mainstream. And I mean, we even saw it earlier in the conversation with Jimmy and Craig, where even someone at that level still has a lot of misinformation and illusions about where the industry actually is at. So I think communication is a massive piece of the puzzle. Yep. And I think the second piece that's really important to both is regulatory. I think that if we can solve this communication problem and get the right people educated about the benefits of this technology, of this world, then that will lead to some people being more confident about setting regulations that actually allow us to have some stability in bankable growth.
Okay. And I guess, Sean, I mean, you guys are building a swaps derivatives exchange. So I imagine I kind of already know what you're going to answer, but go for it. What's your biggest challenges?
Regulatory. Regulatory really is the biggest because an awful lot of the regulation that has come out to date was reactive, right. Primarily driven at protecting retail investors from scams. The whole ICO thing, I think, was just really bad for everybody. Yeah. So it's kind of hard to get some of the regulators to engage and have a more proper discussion about the things that need to be done in order for institutional investors to come into the space. Right. I think, having said that, I think progress is being made. I think there's some great regulations that are coming out in Japan in April. I hate to say there's great regulations because I don't really like regulation, but I do think that at least there's an attempt at regulatory clarity there that's not well understood. I think the U.S. is still going way too slow, taking a wait-and-see attitude about a lot of things, but I'm optimistic about the future.
Okay, wonderful. Good answers. So along that same vein, I mean, I heard a little bit of, from what Roy and what you said, Sean, that regulatory aspect certainly has a public perception angle to it or dimension to it. So my next question is to deal with this. In an industry where we have effectively kind of like a broken internet. We live in a world of fake news. We live in a world of Twitter, where what people think about projects and companies and people are generally steered by social media campaigns, which are obviously, up for sale. So in this world of FUD, right, you guys as thought leaders in your companies, how do you manage to sort through all of this, try to figure out what's real, what's not, what's worth paying attention to, and what's worth ignoring, in order for you to get to the truth? Because I imagine this is something that would be very, very critical for you guys running like real businesses. Why don't we start with you, Sean?
At the end of the day, I think as much as things change, things haven't changed. And it still requires a lot of footwork. Before we had the internet, it took a lot of time to do research. We have the internet, it still takes a lot of time to do research. There's no substitute for, going and meeting people and checking things out for yourself. And so basically, you can't believe what you read on the internet.
Okay. Let's try Gabor next.
I think it goes back to what Roy said earlier about education and having that ability to not just have a marketing team behind us to put what we would consider the right information out there, having blogs and continuously updating and informing our users of what is actually happening from the inside, rather than getting their information from other sources.
All right. And maybe blockchain could be, Bitcoin could be used to help that somehow? All right. Roy?
Yeah, so I agree in general. I think that it generally comes down to different informations and systems being used. One of the things that pops into my mind right away is Stack Overflow, which is a website that developers can use. I mean, there's a whole bunch of them now, but mainly Stack Overflow, developers can go on it and people can ask questions and get answers, but it's a community-driven environment that allows where everyone is essentially a moderator, and you can have a rating system and people who, people genuinely care about the type of answers and you can vote things up and down, you can vote questions up and down. I mean, those are the types of things that I think need to happen in mainstream media, really, where we've got to stop thinking in the old school one-way push. It's got to be this two-way bilateral conversation, essentially. And I think that blockchain and BSV specifically, now it has the capability to allow those sorts of things to happen on a grand scale.
Wonderful. Cheong, any thoughts?
Well, I think, instead of FUD, I like the phrase that was coined by, I think it was Paul yesterday, fuddle, including
Fuddle,
FUD
yes.
and lies, right?
Yes.
Well, I think the way, for large institutions, we don't have a big problem in kind of like, basically seeing what's right and what's wrong. I think, it's basically for the masses, and if you want people, the retail people especially to be involved in this world, you need to have more like an authority, which is, which people can trust.
Right.
Something like a Bloomberg or a Reuters in the old traditional financial world. So I think this is something which perhaps, Bitcoin Association can play a major role in, where you can, you should be factual and the information that you release are neutral and, and reliable. I think once you have that, I think, like Jimmy, and yourself, like the Bitcoin Association, if you play that role, it will encourage more people to, to be more comfortable and to embrace this new thing.
Right. Okay. Great. Yeah, we will definitely take that under advisement.
Fuddle.
Fuddle, yes. Let's all have a cozy fuddle. I just can't get that image on my head. So, next question. This is the exchange panel. It's going to have to be asked for the Quadriga CA case, right? For those of you who don't know, Quadriga CA was an exchange lost $150 million of their assets when their CEO went to India and ended up dead. I put that in quotes because I don't know whether or not he's really dead or not. But he definitely had a death certificate, but there was no body ever retrieved. So, anybody's guess. You guys run exchanges. This is always going to be a risk, or at least, perceived risk, definitely a risk today, of a loss of funds. Until this kind of thing this kind of risk can be mitigated, it's going to be very, very scary for regular people to put your money and start trading in exchange. So, what are your thoughts on this, and how are you guys, what do you think should be done to prevent something like this from happening in the future? Let's start with Roy.
Sure. So it's actually a problem that we see and have to deal with in the hedge fund as well. I think that unfortunately a lot of exchanges were founded in a very technical way, and they grew out of very technical roots, as opposed to the traditional banking industry and financial industry, which evolved over a long period of time with lots of different checks and balances. And I think that there really needs to be some research and adoption of some traditional banking philosophies. For example, if you're in charge of finances at a very high level, there should be a four-step process where you have an originator, an approver, a creator, an approver, an execution person. So you have different people in that funnel. I think this notion of it's safe because I'm the only one with the key, it doesn't really make much sense. And again, I know we come back to it, but BSV has some pretty cool technology around solving that problem.
Okay. How about Sean? Do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, don't put all your eggs in one basket, basically.
Good advice.
I think that traditional financial institutions are a great example of organizations that have processes and procedures in place. And same with the airline industry. Pilots have checklists, and other people check what they do. So I think that the startup exchanges that got going, they need to upgrade every aspect of themselves, not just the technology that's out there.
Cool. Gabor?
I think we have to take a look at what an exchange function should be. Ultimately, an exchange should be a trading venue for efficient price discovery. And unfortunately, what's happened over the evolution of exchanges is that exchanges have become de facto custodians as well. So trying to move on to an exchange's fundamental role, which is having a deep pool of liquidity, price discovery, and moving away from the custodian side of things.
So what you're saying
could well be part of that solution. We're seeing that trend especially over the last year or so, where a handful of regulated custody platforms have been growing, and that can also unlock the floodgates for more institutional adoption, especially from funds managing outside money.
Right, right.
I think that trend will continue moving forward, as I think that's the right way to go about things, in my opinion.
So don't keep all your eggs in one basket, and then move the basket over there behind the stage. Okay. How about Xiao?
Well, I guess this is a very simple thing. It boils down to regulation. Two things. One, it's either you self-regulate or it's imposed regulation, which is the route that is taken in Japan. Well, when it comes to regulation by, like, for example, the Japanese FSA, it can be a very cumbersome process. But it is a very efficient way, a very effective way of protecting consumer. It's a form of consumer protection. However, it can be really, really cumbersome in the sense that if you want to list a coin, say a BSV or a EOS, for instance, it will take you at least 6 to 12 months to go through the whole rain dance of going through Japan Virtual Currency Exchange Association and then to FSA. So it's a bit of a balance. Do you want to go that route or this route? But I think going forward in the next couple of years, you will see a huge consolidation, and most of these exchanges will be regulated. So I think it will go down the route of regulation by FSA.
Okay. So regulation, custody solutions probably being enforced in the future. All this stuff like.
I would just add to that. I think a lot of the regulation. I mean, Japan's a great example. It's still reactive, and a lot of today to run an exchange in Japan, just to start it up, you probably have to have 40 to 45 people. You have to have all the systems built and in place before you ever do one trade just to get a license. That's a pretty tough barrier. It makes it really uneconomic for a lot of new players to come into the business, and so the industry's failure to take care of itself and address some of these issues up front has led to this type of reactive regulation. I would hope that the industry would be more proactive itself so that more of that type of onerous regulation wouldn't get imposed upon it in other jurisdictions.
Right. Okay. All right. Yeah, that's a very valid opinion. That's a very valid opinion. I think the onerous, the things, the hoops you need to jump through in order to get regulated are kind of sometimes too high, even though they're there to try to attempt to protect the public. Okay, so this is kind of like a similar topic, right? Barriers to entry, right? Putting a barrier to entry is on one hand to protect the innocent against shysters. On the other hand, it is a barrier to entry to people who could probably do a good job, but don't have the capital to. Which brings us to our next topic, ICO tokens. People say it's supposed to be the fundraising or crowdsourcing, solution of the future. Well, they did say it. I don't think anybody says that anymore, or at least nobody serious says that anymore. You guys all run exchanges. Exchanges need to list tokens. What kind of listing policies would you take, or would you recommend to an exchange, when it comes to tokens of either ICO nature or other nature? How should you guys decide what gets listed or not? Let's start with Tiong.
Well, I guess when it comes to ICO, it's very clear. You have to think about two things. One is about the utility, whether the particular token coin has any usage. And the second thing is about ownership. So and to your question, I think most exchanges already have a list of criteria on what kind of things you need to, the checkbox. What do you need to be before you list it? You're able to list it.
Right.
I think the challenge or the complexity is whether exchanges do adhere to it in a very systematic, in a very disciplined way.
Right.
Because we go through all these exchanges, and when we trade with the other exchanges on the street, we realize that sometimes they change the criteria without informing the public.
Right. So should the criteria be standardized, or?
I think first and foremost, I think is ICO, should it exist in the first place? I think a different form would be like an STO, which we have actually in SBI, we've been focusing a little bit more recently. But, that's a topic for a different day. But I think, ICO itself, and I'm looking through the white paper over the last couple of years, for the record, I would say 90% are all perhaps looks very scammy, for
Any-
lack of a better word.
Anybody else have an opinion on that? I'm just going to go random. Any opinion?
Well, I would say, you know, in the United States, the SEC has been prosecuting securities fraud since 1933. And if it walks like a duck and talks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's a duck. And so there are rules out there today for securities issuance in most countries. And I think at the end of the day, you know, if it's a security, it's probably going to have to follow some form of securities rules. As far as what tokens get listed on individual exchanges, I think that should be a business decision of the individual exchange. But as far as whether it's an ICO or not, I think in most countries there's already laws out there about that, and I really hate, you know, the idea that we're going to have to come up with more laws for ICOs, because I think that probably will have a negative impact on innovation.
Should exchanges charge listing fees? Gabor?
Yes.
How would you price a listing fee?
Again, this is very much on a case-by-case basis. As an exchange, what we should be doing is listening to our users and supporting their needs. So if there is a utility token that we see demand for, then we will consider it.
Okay. Roy, any?
Yeah, no, I agree, you know, fundamentally with everything. I think that, look, the reality is that, you know, time and time again we see examples of how exchanges haven't been taking responsibility for the different pieces of the puzzle. It's been very much a, you know, and not all exchanges, but many exchanges have been very hands-off. Oh, I'm providing the technology and the platform for you guys to connect, but I take no responsibility, you know, for the quality of the product that I'm actually delivering. And I think that fundamentally needs to change. I also think that, you know, the ICO issue and craze that we had before, you know, that a lot of that was driven by people blindly getting involved in an ICO because of the simple fact that it was an ICO. Like this, you know, I think a lot of people thought they were just investing in blockchain or crypto and this thing's going to skyrocket. And I mean, there's a lot of greed and other things that you know, got into it. And so I think that, you know, again, I go back to the other example where I think that as an industry, we need to not sort of, you know, lift our noses up at the traditional institutions and the traditional industries that have formed over a great many years and have wonderful experiences. Like, let's take advantage of the fact that we can move very quickly, but let's use them as references and then implement. I think exchanges should follow very traditional procedures for putting stuff public. Right. I do think that we can do them much faster, but fundamentally, yeah.
Okay, great advice. Rule of law. Okay, we've heard a lot about it. I think many of the presentations, including the ones from Dr. Wright, speak about Bitcoin, BSV being, you know, going out and beyond the, you know, the call of duty to become legally compliant. You know, whatever rules need to be enforced can be enforced. How important is, when considering blockchain's technology, is that to companies like yourselves? Tiang.
Well, I guess, like, you know, I mean, like, coming from, you know, a very kind of like, you know, compliance-oriented background, working in, you know, American banks, rule of law is naturally very, very important. I think, you know, with BSV, you know, with the whole ecosystem protecting it, I think it's probably going to be much better and much safer to employ that rather than, you know, the other, you know, particular blockchain, which may not be that, you know, white. You got to be whiter than white to survive in this industry, I think.
Right. Anybody else? No?
Sure.
It's okay?
I'll jump in. Yeah. I'll just say quickly. So I think that, I mean, I agree with Young. Yeah, it's massively important.
Yeah.
I think no matter what jurisdiction, it's incredibly important. I think that, you know, we need to set the example, though. Like, I think that just sitting on the sidelines and waiting for regulatory bodies to decide to pull this in by virtue of us messing up a whole bunch of times and potentially breaking rules and laws is probably not the best way to go about this. I think that, you know, we should consider things industry-wide, like creating, you know, standards, you know, general standards and policies. Let's set a standard and force our peers in the industry to follow those standards, and then let's use those standards as ways to lobby government bodies and saying, look, we're self-governing ourselves. We understand how this works. We can set the rules, and we're asking you to take over this and regulate us. It's similar to many industries do that. Most law societies do that exact same thing. So, anyways, I think it's a mutual effort.
Excellent, excellent. In the course of time, I'm going to just ask the next question to the guys who haven't spoken in a while. Private blockchains versus public blockchains. What's useful for you and what's not, and why? Sean.
So I started my career at JP Morgan. Our traditional business has users like B of A, Wells Fargo, UBS. A lot of those companies are members of some private blockchain consortiums. I started my blockchain journey about 2 years ago, very much in the private blockchain space. Over the last year, I've seen a lot of, I would say, improvements, and I've learned a lot more. And today, I think that you can do just about everything you want to do with a private blockchain, probably with a public blockchain. And I'm not that familiar with all of them, so I don't know if it's just SV that could do that, but I think they can both coexist. I think you can use both together, but I don't think that you're locked into just needing a public blockchain.
Okay. Anyone else? One other person? One other comment? No? Going once, going twice? All right. For our final sort of speed round question, I'm going to give you a phrase, and the phrase may refer to a specific blockchain or not. And I want you to answer with just one word. All right? So here we go, all right? Each one you get a one-word answer. Code is law and the world computer. What do you think?
No.
Tiang?
Code is law?
Yeah, Ethereum.
Sorry.
Code is law and world computer.
Ethereum. Entropy.
Entropy, okay, I like that answer.
Leverage.
Naivety.
Huh?
Naivety.
Naivety, all right. Well, I think everybody likes that one. All right. Don't trust, verify, and run your own node. Tiang.
Oh, I know that one. Grandfather clock. Does it qualify as one word?
That qualifies as one word, right?
Time.
Criminal.
Oh,
Sorry.
criminal.
Yeah.
Roy?
Criminal.
Criminal, okay, okay.
Time.
Time.
Insufficient.
I like it. All right, this is fun. All right, next one. Electronic anonymous cash for gray markets and possibly stuff you want to do in your hotel room when nobody else knows.
Bad.
Illegal.
Huh?
Illegal.
Yeah?
Illegal, sorry.
Illegal, okay, well, illegal.
Regulate.
Regulate.
Insanity.
Okay. And finally, law is law, business first, utility first. Tiang.
Pragmatic.
Sean.
Reasonable.
Gabor.
Moon.
Moon. I like that. Roy?
BSV.
All right, with that, thank you very much, guys. Thanks. Have a round of applause for the panel.
Hey guys, I'm Johanna Botha from CoinGeek.com, and I'm here with Tiong Hung from Global Alpha Trading. So tell us a little recap of what you spoke about today at day 2 here at CoinGeek.
Well, basically, it was more like a panel discussion where we've got like 4 other panelists talking about exchanges and the usage of digital assets and the penetration of that in the markets and how you're able to accommodatize this particular thing in for the masses and enterprises. So that was basically the gist of what transpired in our panel discussion just now.
And how do you plan to bring it to the masses?
Well, I think the Global Alpha Trading in Hong Kong. I'm based in Hong Kong, but don't worry, I'm fully sterilized.
I didn't even think about that.
No, the thing is, I'm fine. I'm totally fine. But the way that we are able to do it is that we have to go step by step, and it's about education, educating the public. This is not just another Ponzi scheme,
Right.
and BSV is something that we can actually scale up, something that we can actually use in our daily activities, and not just another form of payment. It can be. However, there is more than just payment, more than just ability to pay people with a particular token. So true education is, I think, is one of the most important way to reach the masses.
With OKCoin, what are some of the challenges that you face as an exchange?
For us, it's always about competitiveness. and staying competitive within a very tough market. There's a handful of exchanges that execute the majority of the liquidity, and OKCoin and OKX, we're lucky enough to be one of the top, and staying at the top is a lot harder than getting to the top.
Of course. So how do you get the word out there to the masses?
Get the word out there, and it comes down to education. We have a very strong marketing team, and we want to engage our users and our clients and continue to update them on the trading activities as well as any updates on the platform.
I think our biggest challenge is not so much in the BSV space as much as is with regulators in general, just having them being more accepting of crypto and making it easier for investors to get into the market.
So where does regulation stand right now for your line of work?
Well, regulation actually has been improving.
Okay.
It was pretty bad in the aftermath of the whole ICO fiasco, but it's been improving, but regulators require time and work, and that means that we have to spend time educating them. But I think BSV in particular is just a fantastic way forward because I think it gives us a technology that regulators can have confidence in, and I think that that should help address many of the fears that they had in the aftermath of all the ICO scams. I think, really regulators are going to like BSV.
So you talked about the beginning of Bitcoin. Obviously, the whole Bitcoin conference has been about Genesis and the rebirth. I don't want to call it a rebirth because
Genesis is
right. It's the birth, right?
It's
But
right.
what already existed, it's just they went back to the original ways, right?
Right.
Did you ever foresee that happening back in 2009? Did you ever foresee what's happening now with all these different companies using the BSV blockchain and using it? Did you think that would happen when the original Bitcoin came out?
Yes, well, not exactly as it's turned out,
Yeah.
but I always had just immense hope and excitement about the future as soon as Bitcoin came out, and I'm more excited than ever, and I think that, we've only scratched the surface of what's to come.